So long, Frank Lloyd Wright.
It's easy to see that Frank Lloyd had the right stuff. As America's preeminent architect, Frank Lloyd Wright designed buildings which changed the very definition of design. Historic buildings like the Guggenheim Museum in New York and the famous Falling Water Home in Pennsylvania. Wright is the father of organic architecture, a style which said a building should grow out of its surroundings, existing as an organic, inseparable part of the landscape around it. Form follows function, and to learn the lessons of design, look to the lessons of nature. A quiet, typical suburb in Lafayette, Indiana. Nothing unusual about these familiar design lines. But nestled at the end of the street is a piece of history. This is John Christian's home. He's a distinguished professor of bionucleonics and health sciences at Purdue University. He and his wife first met Frank Lloyd Wright in 1948. Not long after that, they asked him to design a home.
And about halfway through the conversation, I said, well, Mr. Wright, will you design a home for us? And he hesitated, like he was going to say no, but instead he said, but of course, I'll design your home. And then, characteristic of Mr. Wright, and he was now in his 80s, he wasn't always really 100% serious. He had this gleam in his eye. And he looked over at my wife with this gleam in his eye, and he kind of leaned over and he said, how much money you got? Well, of course, we had just been married, and we didn't have much money, and we were a little bit shocked, to think that we may be supposed to have a lot of money to build this house.
Wright was especially fond of the family residence, and each home he designed was drawn to fit the lifestyle and budget of a particular client. The Christians were quiet people, so Wright designed a quiet home and named it Samara.
And he said, do you know the word Samara? And my wife and I were somewhat embarrassed because we didn't know what it meant. Most people don't know the word Samara.
Samara means winged seed. The maple seed is probably the most familiar winged seed, but a pine cone also contains a tiny version of a winged seed. Wright took this idea and made it into a sort of logo for the home, and it's found everywhere. Because Frank Lloyd Wright wasn't finished after just designing the house. He designed everything. All the furniture, the beds, and their bedspreads. He even designed the tableware.
He was quite a showman, and many said that he was very egotistical, and I guess he was in a sense. But the basic concept that he had was dealing with people, and he loved to deal with families and to design buildings with the thought of the characteristics of the family in mind.
So long, Frank Lloyd Wright.
Frank Lloyd Wright never saw the ultimate dream of Samara realized. Over the years, John has added features from the original plans only when he could afford them. And John's wife, Catherine, who was so instrumental to the final plans, passed away some 7 years ago. Sadly, she'll never see the living room rug, which is currently being made in Bangkok. But framed around her portrait in the guest room is an indication of just how much a part of this home Catherine will always be. Look closely. Once again, it's the Samara design.
We had many wonderful years in this house. It added to the beauty of our life.
So long.